Hello, Craig Howard here again this morning. I just want to share some thoughts with you today that I've been thinking about. I'm still a little bit under the weather. I want to thank you for the concern and the comments, but I was thinking this morning as I got up, I was thinking about the opportunities that today holds, and I was reading some articles this morning, and I read about Katherine Johnson. Katherine Johnson was a lady they called the human computer. She graduated from West Virginia University. She was a brilliant lady, but she was also involved in one of the first NASA missions to the moon. And what made her so incredible, they've actually made a movie about her, what made her so incredible was that she was able to out-calculate or calculate at a faster speed the calculations that need to be made to figure the trajectories for the spaceship as it was approaching the moon, the trajectories that it needed to make orbit. She had an amazing mind, and she was able to come up with these calculations even faster and more efficiently than the computers that they brought in to do her job. The computers weren't able to keep up, and she had to step in, and she had to make these calculations in the rapid timing that was necessary to protect the astronauts that were in the spaceship. So she was an amazing person, but I got to thinking, what would have happened if this amazing lady had never stepped through the door, had never taken the opportunity to do the thing that God had made available to her, to do the thing that God had opened the door for, to take the opportunity that God had placed before her. You know, we do things like that all the time. God gives us an opportunity to do something or to go someplace or to be a part of something, but rather than step up and say, okay, how can I be a part of this opportunity? Instead of doing that, we tend to make excuses about why we can't, why we're not qualified, why we're not able. We come up with all these excuses that we should never do, and we fail to take the opportunity to walk through the door that God has opened. It makes me wonder how things would have been different if someone like Joseph, the Bible's full of examples of this, but I think of Joseph. Joseph was a man who was constantly put in difficult situations, but each situation opened another door for him. And he ultimately became the savior of the Egyptian empire, but it started out with him being sold into slavery. And that opened the door for him to serve in Potiphar's house, where he gained recognition until Potiphar's wife tried to seduce him. And then when he spurned her advances to save face, she claimed that he had tried to make advances on her, and he was thrown in jail, even though Potiphar didn't believe that's what had happened. And so while in jail, you know, Joseph could have despaired, he could have given up, he could have said, well, you know, I tried to be a good person, I tried to do the right thing, but I can't do it, you know, and just given up. But instead, other opportunities came before him, and finally, he was brought before the king himself. Finally, he was brought before Pharaoh to interpret a dream that Pharaoh had had. And if you know the story, this interpretation of this dream ended up saving the Egyptian empire because it caused them to prepare for huge famines that were going to come. And Pharaoh put Joseph in charge of that whole thing, and so that he set back grain during seven plentiful years. He set back grain, and he set back storehouses full of goods, so that when the lean years came, there was food in Egypt. There was things that people could get. And it brought his own brothers to Egypt seeking food. When they found out they were standing before Joseph, they were terrified. But Joseph made an incredible statement to them. Over in Genesis chapter 50, he said, "But as for you," talking to his brothers, "you meant it evil against me, but God meant it for good in order to bring it about as it is this day, to save many people alive. In other words, he said, you didn't know it, brothers, but he said, God was using you to open a door for me. I never would have traveled to Egypt on my own, but God used you to open a door for me so that I could be in this position and become the one that provided the answer to the salvation, essentially, the physical salvation of millions of people. You know, a lot of times we are faced with doors that God has opened for us, and doors that we should recognize, hey, I have an incredible opportunity here. I have an opportunity to go do something here, but we hold back because we're afraid, because we don't think we're qualified, because we don't like the people maybe that are involved in the situation. Any number of things. It's like we can come up with a million excuses why we shouldn't take the opportunity that God has made available to us. He opens a door and we stand there looking at it saying, I don't know if I should walk through. Well, if God didn't want you to walk through the door, He wouldn't have opened it. God is completely capable of closing any door He doesn't want you to go through. Now, you should approach that door prayerfully. You should say, Lord, is this really something you want me to do? Is this really an opportunity you want me to take? And if that opportunity stays before you, it's been my experience, the best thing to do is take the opportunity if the opportunity stays there, because God is completely capable of removing the opportunity if that's not what He wants in answer to your prayer. But instead, we sit back and we say, you know, well, I'm afraid or I'm worried or whatever. And then we complain when it seems like the opportunity goes away. We didn't take the opportunity. We held back. We made a million excuses. God kept the opportunity before us and before us and before us. And finally, when He'd had enough, when He saw we had rejected it enough, He gives the opportunity to somebody else. And then we sit back and we complain and we whine. My mom used to have a little saying, and I'm sure I'll get it wrong, but whenever she would hear us complaining about something or whining about something, she would say this little poem or little ditty. She'd say, oh my goodness, what is it? I can't remember. I had it just 2 seconds ago, but anyhow, she would come up with this little ditty, this little saying that would talk about complaining and how, you know, it was exaggerating, say, you know, my life is, I can't say it right, but in it, she says, I guess I'll go eat worms. Oh, I wish I could remember it. It's such a cute little saying. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have even mentioned it. But anyhow, the point is, she would kind of make fun of us for complaining about a situation instead of doing something about it, instead of fixing the situation, or instead of making something happen. We just sit around and complain, and God and Mom would just kind of say, "Well, what are you doing whining about it? If you got a problem, then do something to fix the problem." But we want to sit around and we want to say, you know, God, I know You've opened the door, but I'm afraid, I'm worried, and so we sit around and we complain instead of doing something about it, instead of moving forward. I want to ask you today, what opportunities is God putting before you? Maybe it's a relationship opportunity and you're scared to death to ask her out, or you're scared to death to go out on a date with this guy. You know, I'm not saying be stupid. I'm not saying lower your standards. I'm not saying don't make good choices in who you date. The Bible's very specific about that. But as long as this person is an honorable, godly person, and you have an opportunity, now I'm talking to unmarried folks, okay? But, you know, see if the door's open. Go through the door. If God has given you a door for a job and you say, well, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I have all the qualifications. I don't know if I can do it. You know what? Leave that up to the person that's hiring you. It's their job to train you. It's their job to make the decision about whether or not you're the right person for that job. Your job is simply to walk through the door if God opens that door. So, you know, the question that's before you today is, what doors are open to me? What should I do with them? You know, is it a job? Is it a job situation? Is it something else? Is it a relationship situation? Is it something else? Don't be afraid to walk through the doors. If Joseph hadn't gone through the door, if Joseph hadn't taken the opportunities before him, millions of people would have starved to death, and the nation of Israel never would have grown to fruition as it did in the land of Egypt. So, thank God for open doors today. Look at the doors that might be open before you and say, okay, God, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to walk through. Well, my time is up, and I need to move on. I've got a lot to do today. It's a foggy day today, but I need to move forward and get some things done. I hope you have a wonderful day today. If you're watching this on YouTube, why not hit subscribe? If you're watching this on some other, through Facebook or something else, or if it's something that somebody has forwarded to you and it's a blessing to you, forward it to somebody else. All right, that's enough. You have a great day. I hope it's a day filled with blessing, and I will see you next time round. Goodbye.